Alright, so now it's time to read a great book that nobody has ever heard about, This Side of Paradise by Stephen L. Lane. Chapter 1. I'm not sure if I can point to one single event that led to my father's decision to move us to paradise. Maybe it was my mother's drinking, which had been on an increase lately. My father insisted that she drank in order to cope with my younger brother, Troy, but I didn't agree. He was the one who couldn't deal with Troy. He just wouldn't admit it. Before we discovered the truth about my father, I thought the move was his way of trying to save Troy from his destructive tendencies. Of course, later I found out differently. My grandma, cat Katie, was a spry and sassy 72-year-old known to us as Graham, is fond of saying that my younger brother has a bit of devil in him. Actually, Troy is very intelligent. He just uses his intelligence in the wrong way. He changes the system, school, sports, home, life. He can't accept the way things are to the degree that an average person can, and this puts him in conflict with most adults. He questions everything and everyone. Mom used to say he came out of the womb and immediately requested a copy of the doctor's credentials. Whatever the case, my brother's school suspensions for failure to show proper respect to authority figures were paralleling my mother's trips to the liquor cabinet, which was a source of great concern for all of us. My father was also becoming increasingly frustrated by the fact that no form of reprimand had any effect on my brother. Graham insisted the move was Dad's way of showing Troy who was the boss. You know how your father likes to control things. He always has. She explained as we neared the house during the last leg of our morning run. Graham's gearing up for another marathon. Says she wants to put more distance between herself and all the old people this time. Oh, what a time he gave me growing up. There was a trace of nostalgia and something else I couldn't quite identify in her voice. Troy could grow up to be just like him, except for one thing. What's that? I asked curiously. I was fascinated by my grandmother's keen observations. She knew people, really knew them, within minutes of meeting them, and as far back as I could recall. She was never wrong. I remember when some of my father's business associates and their wives came to dinner several years back. Even though we were very young, Troy and I had been allowed to eat at the table. In fact, my father had insisted on it, and he and mother buy us matching suits. As the last car pulled away that evening, he turned on us all and grinned. Now this was a perfect evening. You all behaved wonderfully. I remember him patting Graham's hand as if she were a child, saying, "Mother, I noticed you refrained from telling any of your outrageous stories this evening. It was most appreciated. It could have been a very embarrassing situation for me if you had said something to offend my guests. They are very important people. I'm glad I met with your approval, Chip." She looked straight into his eyes, and I saw anger burning there that came out in a clipped, sarcastic response. "Perhaps you'll give me a biscuit as well as a pat on the head." Abruptly, she withdrew her hand from his grasp and started up the staircase. She had gone no more than halfway when she stopped suddenly, turned to look down at him with eyes that I knew, even then, held the wisdom of ages, and said quite matter-of-factly, "Your friend Mitch, the one who tells dirty jokes in front, impressed with, he's cheating on his wife." And with that, she gracefully ascended the stairs. A month later, Mitch's wife left him, and a month after that, he was married to a woman Graham said he had probably just made the varsity pond squad at Central High. Troy's got heart. He feels things deeply, she told me as we crushed down some autumn leaves on the way to the back porch. Your father doesn't. At least not in the way I'm talking about. It hurts me to say it, but my son has always wanted to look the best, be the best, and have the best. And he made it clear from the time he was a teenager and that he'd do whatever was necessary to get there, no matter who it hurt. I heard a catch in her voice and watched helplessly as a tear made its way gently down her wrinkled cheek. Your brother wouldn't hurt anyone purposely, Jack. She took my hand, placed it between hers, and rubbed it affectionately. It's not really that he's rebellious. It's natural for him to question things. Most people just don't understand that. Your father, for example, thinks that moving away from Davenport and enrolling Troy in a private school will change him. But your brother can't be duped into behaving like the typical corporate giant's son. It isn't his nature. It isn't yours either, she said, winking at me. You just play the game a little better. The second theory I had about the move was that my father was trying to please his new boss. The corporation my father was working for since I was born was downsizing. He jumped ship about a year ago. He quickly found a position with a new company called Eden, which he said offered him tremendous room for advancement. He had been with Eden a little more than 2 weeks when he christened it the perfect place to work. He talked nonstop about Eden's philosophies of business and family. In fact, he told us Eden was a family in and of itself. I'll admit, I thought that sounded a little strange at that time. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to just how strange it was. As my father explained it, Mr. Eden, the owner and chief executive officer of the company, had purchased all the land in the tiny village of Paradise, which is located about 40 miles from our town of Davenport. Interestingly, Mr. Eden sold the houses in Paradise to his employees at the tremendous savings provided. They signed an agreement that, should they move, their homes would be resold to him at the fair market price. And this is the most exciting thing, my father told us at yet another evening meal, during which we had once again heard far more than we cared to about Eden. Mr. Eden himself came to see me today, and he's offered us one of the finest homes in Paradise at an incredible price. What? My mother, who rarely interrupted my father's worship sessions regarding Eden, was genuinely surprised. Chip, you can't seriously think of moving. The boys have their friends at school. Katie does her volunteer work for the Red Cross, and I have my obligations with the town council. It's not that far off of a drive. Surely you could. My mother stopped in mid-sentence when she saw the look on my father's face. It was the look that we'd seen more frequently since he had been working for Eden. It seemed to me anyway that it was the look of dissatisfaction, not so much with our behaviors as with ourselves. My father had never been easily pleased. He has always held everyone to the highest of his personal standards, but something had changed since Mr. Eden had entered the picture. Now it appeared, with frightening regularity, we didn't seem acceptable to him anymore. Susan, he said icily, I would like to share some good news with the family, and if you would do me the courtesy of trying not to squelch it would be eternally grateful. Ever since he went to work for Eden, my father has been very harsh with my mother. His comments were often curt. He spoke down to her, ridiculed her. She began drinking, I think, to cope with him, not Troy. A shift in focus became evident as my father turned his gaze toward Troy and me. Boys, Eden has a private school for the children of the employees. It is funded and operated solely by Mr. Eden. It has everything the local high school has and more. Technologically, it is superior to any school in the country, quite likely to any school in the world, and you have both been offered an opportunity to enroll tuition-free. The only condition is that we move to Paradise. Mr. Eden requires all children to attend a school to be residents of the village. I could tell two things were going to happen immediately. Troy was going to speak, and Dad was going to lose it. So I decided to become this sacrificial lamb, a role that was ill-suited to play as I instantaneously developed a serious case of dry mouth at the mere thought of what I was about to do. Dad, I ventured carefully in the uncharted waters of rebellion, I'd rather stay here. I mean, that other school sounds great and all, but I'm a junior now, and I'd really like to graduate with my friends. I know it would be imposition on you, but do you think that you could keep driving to Eden since it's such a great place to work and we could just stay here? There, that didn't sound so rebellious. I gave myself an A+ on delivery until I looked at my father's face. A nasty storm was brewing, and just as it had begun, Troy drew the attack in his direction. What's with this Eden guy anyway? Why does he want all the employees' families living in the town where his company is? What does he want all of their kids in the school? If you ask me, it's bizarre. Why would the boss want his employees so close all the time? What's the big deal? Does he feel like he needs to monitor you guys or something? Maybe this guy's kind of whacked out, you know? Maybe it's some kind of weird cult, and he's going to tell everyone to set their houses on fire or poison their kids, or some kind of nutty. My father stood, his face white with rage. Had I known what was to come in the next few months, I could have weathered this easily. But here now, this was the limit of my experience with fear, and I was scared. Very scared. He was looking at Troy with ominous glare that made my insides turn to jelly. His entire body began to tremble. Graham moved quickly to Troy's chair and stood behind it and placing her arms protectively around his chest. I could see her hands quivering, but her eyes were blazing. She was going to challenge him.